crisis radio. So if you compare the Tea Party of today to the Liberty League of the 1930s, you'll see that the Tea Party has rather more of a mass base, so I wouldn't overestimate that. It's the traditional 20% of the far right which are now left, the ultra-reactionaries. The difference is that they are profoundly energized by the horrors of Obama, and this, in some ways, we can look back at Carter, and it was under Carter that we get the emergence of the modern political Christian evangelical movement. That started as a backlash against Carter, and that is what gave rise then to the world of Falwell and Robertson and so forth. And that whole thing stayed around for decades. It kept going, and unfortunately now, because of Obama and this gaggle of crazy people that he's got around him, the czars and the rest of them with the views that they have, this has really energized the 20% of the ultra-reactionaries, and they feel that they are now the wave of the future. I don't think that this is likely to work too well. Right? I think there's a growing awareness that perhaps, as happened in Australia, that people look at the right-wing alternative and say, wait a minute, we want to get rid of Obama, but we certainly don't want to give power to these people, because these people will flay us alive in their own way, which on the whole is rather more brutal and more blatant than the methods used by Obama. Right? Remember, Bush, of course, was an open imperialist reactionary, whereas Obama does everything with deception and dissembling. And Obama, even as he destroys the unions and wrecks the UAW and the teachers union, he's out there operating under left cover. So the difference is, I think, also then that the U.S. economy has declined. It is much sicker, much less healthy than it was even in the 1930s, in the sense that productive employment is now the exception. Productive employment is now practically a marginal phenomenon, right? The number of people actually employed in manufacturing has gone way below the historical standards. I think it's below 20 million at this point, and continuing to fall. So this opens up this area of a middle-class backlash, similar to the Perot voters of 1992. Again, the real estate broker, the stockbroker, the lawyer, the retired military, another important group, and they are susceptible to this right-wing messaging, especially in the presence of somebody horrendous like Obama, that seems to make it all add up. But whether that can translate into large gains at the polls in more than a few selected states is uncertain. Again, I think it would be probably good for the country for Pelosi to be put out of business and have the House fall into Republican control. It seems to be what might happen. On the other hand, not with a big majority, just a bare minimum that they can eke out. And I think that may be more likely than people think. Again, looking at Australia, that would give then the Republicans the chance to get some investigating committees going, and indeed, it might be the birth certificate, but also all kinds of other issues. Fine, go ahead and do it. Two houses, I think that's probably too much, right? We don't want to give the Republicans too much. I think we want to give them just enough for them to show what they're made of, and I think that will then horrify people enough so that they'll be looking for something different. The conclusion we have from Glenn Ford over there at the Black Agenda Report: one truth remains: only a massed people can defeat mass capital. If the American left is capable of bearing that in mind in the critical times ahead, it might just escape the blind alley and make some modest contributions to this world. But, of course, that is going to mean dumping Obama, or coming as close as possible to dumping Obama as the Democratic nominee, because otherwise it's clear that he's going to stoke the fires of this right-wing rebellion, which has a certain surface justification to it. And again, Obama is not the new Franklin D. Roosevelt. He is the opposite. He is the anti-Franklin D. Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt attacked Wall Street in his inaugural address, Obama in his inaugural address said, we are all responsible because of decades of difficult choices that we wouldn't face, like destroying Social Security and Medicare is what it comes down to. The handiwork of Roosevelt is, in particular, Social Security and the unemployment benefits and the minimum wage, and Obama is now masterminding an attack on those. Obama is not the new Lyndon B. Johnson. He's the anti-LBJ. LBJ had many positive features in the domestic policy arena. One of them is Medicare. What's Obama's contribution? Looting $500 billion out of Medicare. And, of course, Obama is not the new John F. Kennedy. He's the opposite of John F. Kennedy. What's Kennedy's signature policy issue? Going to the moon, the space program. What's Obama's relation to the space program? He's destroying it. So that's essentially where we're left. The Republicans are now saying it's time for more deregulation, in particular this guy Scott in Florida. We just saw him on TV saying it's time for more deregulation and no taxes on business whatsoever. Well, the BP oil spill, if anything, is a matter of deregulation, right? The Bureau of Mines and the Minerals Administration there and the Department of the Interior is responsible for the lax standards that allowed the BP oil spill. We've had mine fatalities in West Virginia and Kentucky caused by the corruption and bribery at the Minerals Management Service and the Bureau of Mines. We've also got this huge egg recall. Well, what's the problem with that? Is that the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration don't have the requisite authorities to keep salmonella-laced eggs off the market, right? 1.5 billion eggs infected with salmonella. So you want deregulation after those examples? How about Thatcher Milk Snatcher? Her handiwork was to say, we don't want this burdensome regulation. And what was the result? The mad cow disease epidemic. And ultimately, this costs more in the long run than you can ever gain in the specious savings that you think you get out of not meeting the regulations. Because as BP has learned to its sorrow, that stuff will come back and bite you. But the main thing, again, is the answer to Blinder and his argument that the Fed is low on ammunition, the Fed is running out of bullets, the Fed doesn't have arrows in its quiver. Well, wrong. There's always the option of national banking, credit creation for job creation. And national banking means 0% credit given on a preferential basis, not to financial speculation and rip-offs, jips, dodges, and deals by hedge funds, but tangible, physical commodities, real manufacturing commodity production, and starting with infrastructure. And if you do that, you get a lasting recovery. As we're seeing, the problem with the Keynesian recovery favored by, or non-recovery favored by Pelosi and these people, is that if you just think that spending money in any form, whatever, on consumer goods or on useless pet projects, you think that gets you somewhere. It doesn't, because when it's gone, it's gone. The only way you can do this is to have a capital budget so that you're giving yourself an increment in your capital stock of your nation. It's the difference between having the Long Island Railroad break down because the part was installed in 1913 and having super fast, attractive, safe maglev and fast rail for a commuter network that gets cars off the roads, decreases pollution, saves imported oil, does all these things that people say that they want. So that's the difference. And, of course, you've also got to increase the productivity of labor, and that is the effect. So those are the policy bullets. Those are the arrows left in the quiver that have got to be used now to get out of this world economic depression. And we'll see you next week.